Okay, today I'm going to show you how I roll. I'll move my tea mug out of the way. I'll show how I roll by hand white earthenware clay slabs. The first thing you need is an amount of clay. Now, over the years I've come to see that to get the size of slab that's useful, about 1.5, 1.6 kilos of clay. This is actually 1/16 of a 25 kilo block of clay. So if you've got, buying it in 12 or 12.5 kilos, it would be, an eighth. And 10 kilos, well, I don't know, it's complicated. You can work it out. But you want a bit around 1.5, at least 1.5 kilos. So, the cloth that I roll on has to be nice thick. I use heavyweight denim that I got cheap somewhere because it leaves a nice texture in the clay, or an acceptable texture. I use the dark side if I'm using terracotta, and the lighter side if I'm using white clay. The first thing I do is press it out reasonably flat. Now I just got into a habit of doing a little bit rolling more than you probably need to. I use a little rolling pin just to do this, to get it. As you can see, always roll in different directions. This is, I think, because clay has a memory, like wood even, but it wants to curve. And if you roll at 90-degree angles, now I'm going to roll this way, and then I must flip it so that I'm rolling that way. I'll show you. Now, what I'm rolling on 1/2 of this cloth, as you can see, so I can then flip it onto a drier side. Important to try, because you can see wherever you put the clay, there's a wet patch, because it's taking the moisture out of the clay, and it's good to do that. But if the cloth gets too wet, it'll start sticking to it. Then of course you need a cloth above. Again, I'm using the white side. Now, I used to use a normal rolling pin. This is a hobby one, that's not for the cooking really, but as wide as possible so I can roll quite big slabs, but it's not really big enough. And also you need to put a lot more pressure on. I'm getting old, my wrists were starting to hurt if I did a lot of rolling. So I found a solution, apart from buying a machine, which I can't afford, which is to get I found a place that sells metal, and this is solid iron. I don't actually know exactly what metal it is, but it's not expensive. And this is a solid roll, about 6 centimeters in diameter. It weighs about 17 or 18 kilos, and it takes a lot of the effort out of it. See, I don't lift it very much, I drag it. Put it roughly central in the thing and equidistant, and then kind of roll from the center out. Don't go too much, because you'll distort the shape of the slab. Right, that's enough. Now, what I'm doing is with this is that I'm going to lay this down in a way that I know which is the wetter side. So if I lay it down, I'll pull from the bottom when I pick it up again. So now I've been rolling that way. I want to turn it that way and flip it over, very important. Roll from the other side. Now you see I'm putting it in the centre of that dry side. This is quite wet, you can see the stain there. But give it a chance to dry out whilst I'm doing the next roll. Again, I'm picking up from the bottom, so I'm using the drier side of this cloth as well. It promotes that, you know, the moisture is removed from the clay in an even way, not all on one side or anything. Right, that's in the centre and it's equidistant roughly. I don't have to push down, as you might imagine. And I'm only going up and down a couple of times, that's enough. Because especially with the weight of this bar, because otherwise it will start getting too long and a difficult shape to work with. Lay that down. Roll that over. This is dried a little. Enough really. And then I'll move it. See, that's quite wet. But whilst I'm rolling this side, that will dry out a little. You see, I'm smoothing down just to see, I can see where to put the bar for one thing. I also feel how even it is and how big it's getting. That's right in centre. Again, roll out from the middle. Remember, if you're not careful, it's extremely easy to end up with a slab that's thicker in the middle than it is at the edge. Seems to be the natural order of things, which can give you problems when you're joining pieces. Turn it and flip it. So it's always the edges that go to 5mm first. These spacers, by the way, I forgot to mention, I just bought in, in RB&Q, one of the DIY stores. That's long enough for this size of slab, and they're 5mm, which is rather thin for slabs. It makes life a little bit difficult. Most people would work a little bit thicker, but it's a bit difficult to find a piece of wood or spacer that's 7 or 8mm. And actually I like the challenges of working with thin clay. It's sort of my style. Right, there you go. One more. Now what I'll do is you keep doing this until it starts to get completely flat. So I'll cut to nearer the end instead of making you watch. But I guess you have to do this at least half a dozen times, 6 to 8 times in all. Oh, you see, I caught it. To flip that, but that'll roll out. So flip and turn. And you're ready to do this. So I'll cut now and then come back later. Okay. So now we've got to nearly full size, as far as I can see. Now the way to tell this is you can sort of feel it. When I always straighten the cloth out in case there's a crease underneath, and then check and smooth here, and you can sort of feel if it's a bit bumpy in the middle. But the real test is when you put this on and roll out from the middle. It's always best to do one more than you think. There's that. Now, if that rolls, you see it's coming to a stop. Now that's what I think means that it's not as flat as it could be. So even though it feels quite flat, I'll give it at least one more. Turn, flip, carefully. Doesn't matter, just to unfold that gently. Straighten it out in case there's any creases underneath. Not likely, but that's the slightly drier side of this cloth. Again. Smooth that out. Again, every time you turn, it's got to be sort of 90 degrees to the way you rolled last time. So. There's a bit of reluctance there, but we might get away with that. That's pretty good. Another way is if I do this, if there's a bump or dent in the slab, oh yes there is, yeah, it's not done yet. So again, and turn. And a bit of cloth. I mean, in all we've done at least 6 to 8 turns and rolls. Normally I can count on it taking about 15 minutes to roll a slab. Oh, that feels better. And we'll do the test again by just leaving it in the middle, taking it off and seeing if there's a dent. Very slight one. So we'll do one more. Just in the interest of getting it, when you cut it up and use the pieces to assemble to make something, it makes life a little bit difficult. You can really see that dent there. It makes life a little bit difficult if the slabs are different thicknesses. So it doesn't take much longer. And again, the drier side of this onto the drier side. Every time you do this, it's taking a little bit more moisture out of the clay, which is good. Okay. Well, it's rolling very freely now. So let's see if we've still got a dent. Nope. So cool. That's flat. Now, what I will show you is that you can either leave it if you want a smooth slab, or there's another little trick. At this stage, having got it flat, you can roll it over because it's always good to turn it. Because clay has a memory, you see, and if you roll it all the same way, it will try very hard to curve when you don't want it to, as it dries. So, now, there's a little trick that I do to get a texture, interesting texture. Now, as you can see, I've got this is a net curtain, or lace you could use, but I just use a net curtain, and I lay it on over there. Smooth it out so it doesn't crease too much. That on. You can do this like one before and use this as the last one to roll the slab, but this will leave a mark good enough. and then hopefully you can see. I'll move the light just in case. The texture. Now that can make a very interesting piece. Okay. As an additional note, when I have the texture on one side, I'm not going to do that too much, right? I don't want to stretch it. I flip it over so that once you've rolled the slab, you've got to let it dry out a bit. So I put it on a board that I've made. Now these boards are fairly easy. I made them myself out of what builders, what do they call it, shuttering? For casting concrete. You can buy these boards and they're this thick and they're usually coloured in yellow, and cut them up and use them as boards. I've been using these for a long time. It's probably the cheapest way to do it. And then I've flipped it over so that when I flip it onto the board, the textured side will be up. Again, the light should show that. Okay? And then I take a piece of plastic. This is cut up from a bin liner, I believe. I did it such a long time ago, I don't know, I've been using them for years. But they're getting a bit holy, I've got to change them. But this, cover it with plastic like this, and then leave it on a shelf for about 24 hours before you start to cut the pieces out or draw the shapes that you want on it. Okay.